Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am incredibly glad you're joining me for this one because we are about to dive into something absolutely fascinating. We're going on a bit of a journey into the mind's hidden protective mechanisms. Today we aren't just looking at cold, hard facts. We're really exploring the surprising and honestly sometimes totally confusing ways our own nervous systems try to keep us safe in a really complex world. We are unpacking the architect of illusions.
Okay, I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever believed with absolute, unwavering certainty in an event from your past that just didn't happen? Maybe it was a time you got lost in a crowded shopping mall as a little kid, or a near-fatal car accident, or even a deeply hurtful word someone hurled at you. You remember it so vividly, right? But then you find out later, after checking with your family or looking at concrete evidence, that the event literally never happened. It's a terrifying, totally disorienting experience. Those images felt so entirely real that they might have become this lingering, haunting obsession for you for years. And when you realize it's a fabrication, this huge wave of confusion hits. You start asking, wait, why is my own mind lying to me? Am I losing it? Well, what if I told you that your mind is doing exactly what it was designed to do?
Right, let's really get into the meat of this. In our modern world, we kind of have this habit of treating human memory like it's a security camera. We think it's just flawlessly recording every single scene of our lives onto some mental hard drive. But I'm here to tell you that is a complete myth. And this misconception is exactly what inadvertently turns our false memories and phantom obsessions into these heavy psychological life sentences, forcing us to constantly second-guess our own sanity. The truth is, our memories are not locked data files on a server. They are living, breathing, constantly adopting entities that grow and completely reconstruct themselves over time. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. If we strip away that heavy lens of self-doubt and just observe the structure of the mind with some deep existential compassion, we unlock a pretty magnificent truth. The fact that your brain weaves false memories, it's not a sign of madness. You aren't delusional. At its core, it is a highly creative survival mechanism. It's actually a clumsy, fiercely protective effort by your ego. It uses fictional narratives to shelter and explain this unnamed fear or profound emotional void that's hidden deep within you. To really grasp how this works, we need to ground our analysis in cognitive neuroscience. Let's talk about the groundbreaking work of Professor Elizabeth Loftus over at the University of California, Irvine. Through decades of really rigorous research, Professor Loftus proved that human memory is just astonishingly malleable. It's wild. In one of her most famous studies, she successfully convinced 25% of her participants that they had been lost in a shopping mall as children. They recalled it with vivid, emotional details, even though it absolutely never happened. Our brains don't just passively recall the past, they actively rebuild it every single time we reach for a memory. And honestly, what's truly wild is how simple, everyday pressures trigger this whole rebuilding process. Things like a suggestive question, a current underlying fear, or just environmental stress can prompt the brain to automatically insert totally fabricated details into your past and make you believe them completely. And in our fast-paced 21st century landscape, this has evolved into what we call digital algorithm memory distortion. Think about it. Today, we relentlessly consume thousands of short-form videos, sensationalized online stories, and synthetic AI-generated imagery every single day. Our brains are subconsciously absorbing all these scattered digital fragments, and under emotional pressure, they can literally stitch those random pixels right into our own personal history. Which naturally builds to our next concept. Professor Daniel Schachter at Harvard University actually identified the literal brain mechanics behind this. He calls it source misattribution. Here's how it works. When you experience an incredibly vivid dream or watch a hauntingly dramatic movie or even just repeatedly worry about some worst-case scenario, your brain stores those intense images deeply in its emotional centers. But years later, it forgets the regional source. It completely forgets the film or the dream, but it keeps the feeling. So it pulls those raw, intense images out to patch up the fading gaps in your real personal past.
I really want to offer you a vivid metaphor here just to help you intuitively feel the beauty and the evolutionary genius of this mechanism. I want you to imagine your memory as a blind painter. This painter is deeply, deeply devoted to you, but they carry a state of chronic anxiety, and they live inside the dark, ancient library of your nervous system. When you ask this painter to recreate a canvas of your past, they literally cannot see the original details. Those have been erased by the slow passage of time.
But here's the thing about this deeply devoted painter. They refuse to leave behind an empty, unsettling blank space on your canvas. They just won't do it. So what do? They start gathering scattered fragments. They grab a piece of a terrifying dream you had last night, a lingering childhood fear of abandonment, maybe a sensationalized movie you watched years ago, or a digital image you blindly scrolled past. And using their rich imagination, they piece them all together into a complete picture. Then they hand this newly painted canvas to you and declare, with absolute, unshakable conviction, this is exactly what happened. So you see, that obsession with false memories echoing in your chest, that isn't madness. No, it's simply the fierce, fearful loyalty of that blind painter inside your nervous system doing their best to help you. Because to that blind painter, to your primal brain, leaving a blank space is a literal threat to your existence. Your nervous system would much rather hand you a fictional, tragic story just to give you a concrete anchor for your current swirling emotions, rather than force you to face the terrifying, empty void of total forgetfulness. When you look at it that way, it is a profoundly protective act. Let's bring this back to our inner world for a moment and see how this builds. Because these false memories almost always materialize precisely where your inner child was once wounded or abandoned. If you grew up experiencing deep loneliness and this desperate longing for protection, well, your brain is primed to create narratives that perfectly match that internal emotional frequency. The ego is a master storyteller, right? It utilizes this kind of psychological metonymy. It clings to a haunting false memory, like, say, a totally fabricated story of severe childhood bullying, as an unconscious effort to romanticize or dramatize the past. It uses this false narrative to legitimize your current fear of people. It's a defense mechanism, plain and simple. It's there to help you avoid facing the raw, terrifying pain of your current existential emptiness, a deep loneliness, or a perceived lack of inherent worth. It's easier to fight a ghost from the past than a void in the present. So when your ego spins these phantom obsessions, it is actually sending you a profound, metaphorical message. If you listen closely, it's saying, there is a massive, unhealed pain inside of me, and I needed a tragic story so you would finally pay attention to it. Once you hear that plea with deep empathy, you can finally stop panicking. You can stop fighting a war against your own mind. And that brings us to, honestly, the most empowering part of our explainer today. Understanding this protective, fear-driven design lets us pivot toward profound relief. Healing does not require you to desperately dig up absolute historical truths or to constantly argue with the blind painter in your head. Instead, it invites you to perform this beautiful act of memory alchemy, literally cleansing and releasing the energy of the obsession itself. So I want to guide you through a highly practical, 3-step mindfulness ritual we call the alchemy of truth, from illusion to present wholeness. Whenever a storm of intrusive false memories or phantom obsessions rises up, instead of getting swept away by all the dramatic details, you can use these exact steps to break the spell. First, you just pause. Draw your awareness heavily down into your heart chakra and your crown chakra. What you're doing is powerfully anchoring your consciousness in the pure, undeniable energy of the present moment. Next, we move to step 2, which is an intentional emotional release breathing pattern. Let's actually try this together right now. Go ahead and inhale deeply for 5 seconds, gently hold that breath for 5 seconds, and now exhale for a slow, extended 7 seconds. The reason we use this specific rhythm is because it instantly sends parasympathetic safety signals directly to your brain. It immediately downregulates a nervous system that has just been agitated by illusions. It's literally whispering to the blind painter, hey, we are safe now. And finally, we hit step 3. You filter your experience through what we call the sovereign question. You ask yourself gently, am I safe in this exact moment? And how can I use my current love to shelter my inner child without needing to borrow tragedies from my past? Let me tell you, this question is transformative. It completely strips away the ego's need for a tragic backstory, and it replaces it with pure present tense compassion. As you do this, I really want you to visualize that dark, haunting energy, all those stagnant obsessions just melting away under the warm sunlight of pure presence. Just watch as it transforms from an illusory shackle that's been holding you back into a breathtaking gateway for spiritual freedom, deep wisdom, and authentic soul rebirth. You are literally taking the brush back from the blind painter, and you're choosing to paint your reality with love. If you too have been under siege by obsessions of unknown origins, and if you have discovered even a small sense of peace through our analysis today, I warmly invite you to share your journey in the comments below. Let us step out of the mental fog, release the heavy burdens of false histories, and live fully in the glorious light of the present. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll leave you with this final thought. If your mind is powerful enough to construct an entire, vivid reality just to protect you, imagine what it can build when you finally teach it to feel safe,